Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Wake Up and Live Actors Studio. I'm James McGilvray on behalf of Sue Johnson, and we have a wonderful show for you today. A friend and wonderful author, Don Iannone, who has written a number of books, but most recently an autobiography called Stories from an Hourglass. And it's a wonderful read. I use the word wonderful, wonderful, wonderful many times because that's what it is. So today we're at Loganberry Books, one of the premier bookstores in Cleveland. You have to see this place. It's amazing.
It is.
And so we're going to talk a little bit about the book and also about where you can get it and learn a little bit more about Don. So first of all, welcome, Don. So good to see you again.
James, thanks so much, and appreciate you doing this, and certainly appreciate Sue's support, and both of you have been there as friends for a long time. So,
well, in fact, I believe I met you 16, 17 years ago.
It's probably been
right around there, through a friend, Zara Larson.
That's right.
And it's been wonderful since then. Back then, you were significantly involved in teaching, in business consultation, and those kinds of things. Today, I want to focus more on the personal things, the human dynamics that made you the person that you are today.
Okay.
And the reasons why you've chosen to share your personal life and a growth in this amazing autobiography. And just so that the audience knows, in the second half of the book, there's a lot of information about the actual work that he's done in getting to this point, so we'll leave that for you to explore on your own. But I want to begin with your dedication in the book. You said, and I quote, "This book is about how I would like my life and others touching my life to be remembered." Now, given that there are billions of people that none of us ever get a chance to know, my first question is it important to be remembered, and why or why not?
Yeah, I think it absolutely is important to be remembered, and I know that because of the family and friends that I've lost over the years. And it's important for them to be remembered. And so I think I learned that lesson from that. But in a lot of ways, writing a book like this is, it's a personal learning adventure. It's really about deepening one's understanding of oneself. And I think that that's what was compelling to me. But, I always felt as though I was this ordinary guy. And I was always living my life to do things that were beyond my ordinariness. Lots of stumbling blocks in the way, because I grew up humble roots in eastern Ohio coal country, so there were a lot of things that I felt like I had to overcome. But I was really hungry for a consistent story about my life, and I wanted to be as honest as possible. But I'll share this with you. I never wanted to say anything that I would live to regret.
Yes. Well, and it was a very personal autobiography. You did share things that, some people might say, well, why would he share that? But I believe that they were very real in terms of ultimately who you became. We all go through challenges in life. We all do things that we look back on and say, why did I do that? But
exactly.
We become who we are. And in fact, one of the things that you stated, it kind of leads into my next question, is that among your life's priorities is self-awareness and growth. What does self-awareness mean to you?
Well, it's funny, for many years, self-awareness was about bolstering my ego. This false sense of self that had to be fed constantly. And, I did that, through various things going back to my childhood, my years in high school, but aspiring to be somebody great and somebody special. But over time, I began to see that there's something much deeper, and you might want to call that a soul. But I think It was really trying to get in touch with the essence of who I was. And it's been a journey, James. It's not, it's not something that's occurred overnight. Writing this book has helped me to develop an awareness of myself, and in particular, my relationships with other people. Mm-hmm. So, but I think self-awareness meant one thing early in my career when I was aspiring to do all these things and be somebody.
Yes.
But then I realized that's not really who I am.
I see. Well, and one of the things that you had to deal with was a lot of religious dogma early on in your life that you spelled out, and I guess that would lead to the question then, why did you write this book in particular? Was it because you felt that you had made it to, well, and maybe not just why, but why now? Is it because of a level of growth that happened in recent years where your focus changed?
Interesting question. Yeah, I think in part that's true. I was ready, but I wanted it to be an honest expression of my life, and for that reason, it went through 6 edits. If you can imagine that.
Oh.
But you were talking about my early childhood religious upbringing. It set me back in a lot of ways, mostly because it was all these internalized fears and self-consciousness and all kinds of things that convinced me that at the time I needed to break free, which I did. I got on a Greyhound bus, went to Tucson, Arizona, and never really came back home in that sense. But the thing that I came to understand as I have gotten older is that as a young boy and as a teenager, I needed discipline.
Yes.
I was very undisciplined. And so my religious upbringing, in that sense, I think provided that. And I didn't recognize it back then. But upon reflection, I see that now.
Well, one of the things that happened when you went out to Tucson, you met Sally,
Right.
and your friend Dirk.
Yes.
And you mentioned that as a young person, you had been exposed, in addition to the religious dogma, some racism and prejudice, that it was, in your family and such.
Very much so.
And one of the things that you mentioned in the book was that Sally and Dirk had helped you overcome both religious dogma and the prejudice and racism that you experienced in your family. Let's begin with how you feel they helped you in that process.
Well, I think, my relationship with Sally, which ran through our college days, up until mid-1980s, was very much, she was very supportive of me finding myself. And I think her strong sense of social justice, working with Cesar Chavez and many others, made me aware of another perspective of things. But I did. I grew up, in a time when anybody that was different, especially African Americans, were looked down upon, and it was sad. I always vowed that I would never be like that, and so I really worked at it as best I could. But I grew up in just a culture and a whole world where, it was so insular, and if you didn't look, behave, and talk like, the other people that were a part of this clan, if you will, you look down on them, and it was a very sad thing. But I think Dirk helped me a lot just from a spirituality standpoint. That was his contribution, and a very creative person who had this picture of human beings as being within a part of nature as opposed to separate. And he was very committed to his environmental work. But he was an astrologer. He was a Jungian psychologist. He was an English teacher in high school.
Okay.
So he's a very well-rounded guy. And I think I learned to accept my own diversity.
Well, and Italian Americans were also very heavily discriminated against.
They
being
were.
a little bit darker skinned, and
They were.
and when they came here to work in the factories and foundries and do some of the hard labor. So, you know, your family experienced that as well.
Absolutely.
And it does go to show that when we other people, we tend to hurt not only them but ourselves as well, because we all fail to progress.
That's right. That's right.
You, one of the themes of your talk today and future talks is going to be why I write.
Yes.
Now, you also mentioned in the book that turns out your father wrote quite a lot of poetry, as you discovered later
Yes,
on.
he did.
First thing I wanted to know, how much of his poetry survives, and what kinds of things did he tend to write about, and did those things surprise you at all?
Well, I think he wrote about two things. He wrote about everyday life, and he wrote about people and towns and experiences. But his poetry was also very religious. You know, he was a devout Christian, and you know, carried on the path that he was on from, you know, the time I was a young boy. But his poetry, he had probably about 20 of his poems that were published in national journals. That's not bad.
Yeah, no, that's really good.
And just 6 months before he passed away in 2008, he said to me, he said, "Boy, I wish I had a book of my poetry." And I looked at Mary and I said, "You know what that's all about?" And she says, "Yep." And so I edited his one and only book of poetry. They lived in Tupelo, Mississippi at the time.
Where Richard Pryor was from.
There you go.
Or as he liked to say,
Elvis Presley.
Tupelo, Mississippi.
That's right. And Elvis Presley.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I got him 200 copies of the book. And they were gone within like a month. I said, "Well, what did you do with them?" He said, "I gave them away to everybody." And so he said, "You think I could get more?" And I said, yeah, we can do that.
Nice.
But he loved it. And then he died.
Well, you know, going back just a little bit, your memory is amazing. One of the things that I learned, sometimes people will ask me about movies that I've been in, plays that I've been in. I can't even remember the names of the movies. And you described things in high school, like you know, the school directory and how it gave the rules and absences and all of those kinds of things. Conversations that you had with certain teachers. What do you attribute that memory to? Is it things that you remembered, and to what extent did some of those memories end up being refreshed by your interactions with people down the road?
Well, both. The thing that I learned in writing this book is that memories lead to memories. But I also learned from this book that no memory is ever perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So every time you remember something or re-remember it, it changes.
Yes.
But it helped to really talk with a lot of my high school classmates. It helped to just kind of look at, you know, this box of stuff that I had, you know, including the yearbooks and things. And a lot of it just came into, you know, just came into focus. But I can still see Mrs. Stankina standing at the door, and she ended up being one of my inspirations as a writer, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And she was so kind, but I knew I instantly had respect for this woman.
Yes.
Because of her demeanor, the way she spoke, and the way she basically facilitated me into that gymnasium with all these people.
Yes.
Most of which didn't know at all, because
this was your freshman year.
Yeah, that was my freshman year. But it was a great set of memories. So memories spark memories, and when you interact with other people, you gain a perspective of what the situation is. But yeah, I kind of felt good about that. But the other thing is just being open to your life. Because when you open yourself to your life as best you can without judgment, there are all kinds of things that come back.
Yes.
And that's exactly what happened. It took me 2 years to write this book, James. It's a long time.
Well, and the detail is amazing, and it's so well written, which I think goes without saying. Anyone who's read
Well, I
any of your
appreciate you
previous
saying that.
works.
Thank you.
But the organization, you gave some credit to the people who helped to organize the structure of the
absolutely,
book.
absolutely.
And so I guess I would want to know, what do you hope or want most for people to take away from this book after they've read it?
Probably the same thing that I needed from this book, which is that our life story, the stories that we tell ourselves and we tell other people, are important. And it's probably the closest thing to a soulful experience that we can have. And there's so much that's packed into and surrounds every story we tell ourselves. You're an actor. You're an amazing actor. You know what it takes to step on the stage, to play a part, to be able to see this in the context of the play. And it's kind of the same thing. But people love stories.
Yes.
They love stories. It takes a lot of courage to write about your own life.
It does, because you expose a lot of vulnerabilities, personal vulnerabilities, and
you do.
And I would imagine that sometimes just making the decision, what do I leave out, what do I put in, might this hurt someone if I say this, or is there another way that I can say it so that it's true, but which will also be compassionate in terms of the people about whom I'm speaking?
I think you're absolutely right, and there was tons that was removed from the book because it really was all in the interest of blaming somebody else or trying to embellish a story in a way that made me look like the hero. So, the thing when you write your own book, you can be the protagonist, right?
Right.
That's one liberty that you take, but I followed the principle as best I could of do no harm. And, that's why the book took so long.
Okay. Well, now, I guess you kind of answered this earlier, but I'd like to kind of ask it a little different way. What impact did writing this book have on you, and just as important, since she helped to edit it, your wife, Mary?
Well, let's start with Mary, because Mary, first of all, has just been, just an incredible part of my life. And it's mostly because we had a lot of the same kind of different experiences, but they had a similar impact growing up. So we understood each other on that level, and we still do. And we've grown together. We've grown together as a couple, and it's just been an amazing experience. The great thing about Mary is that there's never any question about what she's thinking. She's very direct, forthright, and I appreciate that, because I grew up in a world of people who danced around the question and they didn't address it. Mary says, "Well, what is the question? Well, let's just answer it." And so that's a great thing. But she played a major role in terms of reviewing the book at different points. And so there was both the fact that she had her own view and she looked at it from her own standpoint, but a lot of our lives have been interwoven for the last 35 years.
Yes.
And so it's been a beautiful thing. But what impact did the book have on me? It created a confidence for me to be a writer. And I think it's really important.
Even though you had already written 23 books.
I'd written a lot of other books,
like
but I'm not sure I had the confidence to really call myself a writer. And I think that there's a new build point that you reach when you comb through your life that much, and actually it becomes kind of a foundation for you to do other things. But there's that self-understanding. You know more about yourself. You know your own stories, and so I think it's helped me. 2 new poetry books came out even after the Stories from an Hourglass came out, and a lot of the poems have been around for a long time. I've written them many years ago, dusted them off. But I just had this, there was this force within me that says you could do this. And so I'm working on a new book now. It's all about tracing the American dream through American literature. And the title of the book for now is, since it's not done, is From Wealth to Well-Being. And it's really about reimagining the American dream in the context of literature. And say, well, why would you do that? Well, over the past 25 years, I wrote 12 essays on American literature, really trying to deepen my own understanding and appreciation of it. And so they provided the foundation for me to write this book. But the perspective that I had of the American dream was from spending 35 years in economic development, working in 32 states, 10 countries, and on 10 Indian reservations. I had a really good close-up picture of what that American dream looked like.
Yes.
And there was a lot of things about it that just didn't look right, because it was just about wealth and prosperity, land of opportunity. Not that I never want to try to take the American dream away from anybody. But I think we do need to move to a broader sense of well-being, that we deal with the issues that have to do with, well, inclusion, diversity, the acceptance of others, health care, mental health.
Yes.
Mental health is still such a neglected thing in the world. I mean, it's hard to get any coverage from your healthcare insurance.
And I'm really glad you spoke on that, because Sue, one of the primary projects she's involved now with now is health and wellness, and especially mental health. We will have a program in September at the Dunham Tavern that will deal, in this case, with bullying. We just had a similar program at Dunham this past fall.
I love the topic.
That dealt with certain human interactions, and you can go online to wualstudios.org and see videos of those interactions, because that's one of Sue's primary focuses.
I think
now.
it's a perfect one.
And so, well, listen, with that, we're going to begin to wrap it up, but I want to know, tell the people, please, what your website is, so that if they want to come to a future reading or a presentation by you, get copies of your books, they can do so. So what is your website?
So it's DonaldIannone.com. It's DonaldIannone.com.
All right, and we'll put that, that'll be on the bottom of your screen, so that you can see it and write that down. And I guess my final question then would be, what chapters in your life that do you hope to write above and beyond the actual books, but in terms of your own personal development, as you see your life going forward? What's the vision for the you that emerges in the continuing and hopefully long path ahead?
Well, teaching has always been important to me. I have 2 doctoral dissertation students, and I'm so happy. Andrews, who is from Ghana, successfully defended his dissertation. It took him 2 years, but and I had a conversation with him last Monday, and he's just so happy. And he's going to do amazing things. He's going to work on small and medium enterprise development in Ghana and trying to help entrepreneurs get started. But I love teaching, and so there will always be writing in my life. I've got to finish this American literature book, the American Dream book. After that, I've got an idea for kind of a wild historic fiction book that's about, it's really an extraterrestrial meeting with Adena Indians in the Ohio Valley where I grew up.
All right.
And this all takes place in 100 AD.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I want to have a role in the screenplay.
I think there definitely could be a role for it.
Well, listen, the book, as I mentioned earlier, is Stories from an Hourglass by Iannone. And definitely pick up a copy. It's a wonderful read, and I come back to that word again because that's exactly what it is. You won't want to put it down once you pick it up. And Don, thank you for spending time with me today.
James, thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
And on behalf of Sue Johnson and the Wake Up and Live Actor Studio, I'm James McGilvray, reminding you to wake up and live with the arts every day.